It was a scorching June afternoon in Scottsdale, Arizona, as usual. The sun radiated off the tiled pavement and reflected off the glossy paint of dozens of luxury cars parked in front of Luxury Cars, one of the region's most prestigious car dealerships. A slightly aged silver-gray SUV quietly turned into the rear parking lot. No special license plate, no chauffeur opening the door. The man inside, in his early 40s, with a calm demeanor, stepped out. He wore a plain gray hoodie, faded jeans, and worn-out sneakers. No one paid attention, and that was precisely what he wanted. Daniel Carter, the new owner of Luxury Cars, who had just acquired the dealership network 3 weeks ago, wasn't there today to sign contracts or hold a press conference. He had one purpose: to see how the staff treated someone who didn't look like a typical customer. As he stepped through the cool glass doors, Daniel took a deep breath. The scent of new leather, car wax, polished wood, and icy air conditioning hit him, starkly contrasting the sweltering heat outside. On the gleaming tile floor, people in suits and leather shoes murmured among themselves, glancing briefly at him, then quickly looking away, as if they had already sized him up when they saw the hoodie. Daniel gave a faint smile. He was used to those looks. But today, they would slowly get used to something else. The gaze of an owner, watching everything. The sharp clack of high heels echoed crisply across the gleaming tile floor. From the far end of the showroom, a woman approached. Her brown hair neatly tied back, a fitted black blazer hugging her slender figure, and a clipboard pressed tightly against her chest like a shield. Her face was stern, her eyes razor-sharp, slicing through the air as they locked onto Daniel. Lauren, the sales manager of Luxury Cars, approached the situation with textbook professionalism, but only in appearance. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her voice neither loud nor soft, but as cold as the air conditioning. "May I help you with something?" Daniel turned and gave a polite nod. "I'm just browsing a bit." Lauren's eyes swept quickly from his worn sneakers to his faded hoodie, then returned with an assessing stare. She didn't smile. Or if she did, it was a mass-produced version of a smile. Protocol correct, but soulless. "You're looking to buy a car?" The question rang out, barely hiding her skepticism. "Possibly," Daniel replied, his tone calm. Lauren tightened her grip on the clipboard. "We cater to a very specific clientele. Many of the models here require reservations and financial vetting. Perhaps I could suggest a few options more suited to your situation." Daniel tilted his head slightly. "My situation?" Lauren hesitated briefly but continued without backing down. "Just being realistic. The vehicles here generally start in the 6-figure range. If you'd like, I can direct you to a few other dealerships specializing in pre-owned inventory." The air seemed to thicken. Daniel still smiled, but his eyes grew slightly colder. He wasn't angry. He'd seen this before. Prejudice painted over with a glossy coat of politeness. What disappointed him most was... Lauren said those words as if she was helping him. "You think I can't afford it?" Daniel asked, his voice low and steady. Lauren replied instantly, as she had rehearsed it. "I'm just trying to save both of us time. This showroom isn't for everyone." Daniel nodded slightly. "Then tell me, what made you decide I'm not part of that everyone?" Lauren was silent momentarily, long enough for a crack to appear in her usual composure. But then she pivoted to another topic, as if the matter was already settled. "In any case, please don't touch the cars unless you have an official appointment with one of our consultants." Daniel watched her as she walked away, the heels striking their emotionless rhythm against the stone floor. He didn't need to say anything more. He had already taken note of everything. One question echoed in his mind. If I were a white man wearing a Rolex suit, would I have been directed to the exit in the first minute? He knew he was about to do something Lauren would never see coming, Lauren returned a few minutes later with a stack of papers. Not the typical glossy brochures of luxury cars, supercars, but a faded, worn-out printout. A list of used vehicles priced at a fraction of the flashy coupes on the showroom floor. "Here," she said, placing the stack on a nearby display table. "I've selected a few models that might be more appropriate for your situation." Daniel flipped through the pages. An old sedan, an outdated SUV, and a low-cost hybrid. The highlighted descriptions read, "Practical, fuel-efficient, low maintenance," as if pre-written for those deemed unqualified to walk into a place like this. He folded the stack and tucked it into the pocket of his hoodie, still maintaining a polite tone. "Thank you. I appreciate your effort." Lauren raised an eyebrow, surprised that he didn't react negatively. She lowered her voice as if about to reveal an insider secret. "I don't mean to offend. It's just, I've been in this business for years. I can tell who's qualified and who's dreaming." Daniel gave a slight smile, but his eyes turned icy beneath it. "You call that truth. I call it prejudice." Lauren flinched slightly, but before she could reply, Daniel continued, calmly but directly. "Could you do something for me?" "What is it?" Lauren asked, cautious. "Let me speak to the owner of this showroom." Lauren chuckled, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was a condescending one, wrapped in politeness. "The owner doesn't come out for walk-ins, you know. They don't waste time on window shopping." Daniel pressed his lips together. A flicker of mischief appeared behind his composed nod. "That's fine," he said, slipping a hand into his pocket. "I'll call directly." Lauren frowned. "Call who?" "The owner," Daniel replied, pulling out his phone and scrolling through his contacts. Lauren froze, standing still and watching. Daniel raised the phone to his ear. "Hi, it's me. Yes, I'm at the showroom. Everything's fine. Just a bit of a misunderstanding. Could you let them know I'm here?" He hung up and turned back to Lauren. His voice was as calm as before. "The owner will be here shortly. I hope you're still standing here to greet them when they arrive." Lauren stared at him, confused. "You just called who, exactly?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He glanced around the showroom, where several employees had paused their work, eyes fixed on him. The air had gone still, as if the entire room was holding its breath. "Just wait," Daniel said, his gaze locked on Lauren. "It's going to be interesting." Several minutes passed, as if the entire showroom had been stretched taut by an invisible wire. Lauren stood just a few steps from Daniel, clutching her clipboard as if it were the final shield between her and the humiliation closing in. The main door swung open. Everyone turned. A man in a navy blue suit walked in, his stride confident, his face composed, but his eyes sharp. It was Alex, the regional director of the Luxury Cars Network. Without hesitation, he walked straight toward Daniel, his expression shifting from professional to radiant. "Mr. Carter, so good to see you again." The entire showroom fell silent. Lauren froze. The clipboard nearly slipped from her hand as her eyes darted frantically between Daniel and Alex, filling with confusion. "Wait, who is he?" she stammered. Alex turned to her, his tone no longer warm. "Lauren, I believe you've already met Mr. Daniel Carter, the new owner of the entire Luxury Cars Network, and the Scottsdale branch is one of the showrooms he just took over." A faint thud rang out. No one had fallen, but Lauren's pride had just taken a steep plunge. Her face drained of color. Her lips moved, scrambling for an excuse. I didn't know. I honestly didn't know you were... Daniel spoke softly, but every word struck the air with force. "You didn't know who I was? Or you couldn't believe someone like me could be the owner here?" Lauren blinked, and for the first time, she looked at Daniel, not as someone who didn't belong, but as someone she had misjudged so badly, there was no salvaging it. She tried. "I didn't mean to discriminate." I just wanted to help. Daniel slowly stepped toward a sleek silver coupe nearby. He ran his hand across the hood to steady himself, then turned back. If I weren't the owner, would I have received that same help? Or would I have always been pushed toward the door as someone who doesn't qualify? Lauren said nothing, and that silence spoke volumes. Daniel nodded, then turned to Alex. I want to see the entire staff in the conference room. Right now, we need to talk. Alex nodded seriously. I'll arrange it. Daniel gave Lauren one last look, not out of vengeance, but to mark the beginning of what he was about to change. Because the shock that had just unfolded wasn't just a lesson for Lauren. It was a wake-up call for an entire system. The main conference room of the luxury cars showroom, usually reserved for business strategy presentations, had now become a space stretched tight like a drawn string. Glass walls, a long polished walnut table, and a glowing presentation screen. But no one paid attention to the luxurious details. All eyes were locked on the man standing at the head of the table, Daniel Carter. He wasn't wearing a suit, still the same gray hoodie, the simple jeans, but now no one dared underestimate him. The air was so thick that even a deep breath felt like it might rattle the table. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Daniel began, his voice calm but firm. I'm Daniel Carter, and if no one has made it clear, I'm the new owner of this Scottsdale branch, along with several other showrooms in the luxury cars network. The room buzzed with murmurs. A few lowered their heads in shame. Lauren sat in the farthest corner, clutching her clipboard like a child holding a safety pillow. Daniel paused for a few seconds, then continued. I came here today dressed plainly, not because I had nothing else to wear, but because I wanted to see how this place treats its customers when they're not in leather shoes or tailored suits. And I got my answer. The room sank into silence. I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came to understand the culture I've inherited and to decide whether it's worth keeping. He slowly walked around the head of the table, his eyes scanning each face. Some avoided his gaze. Some nodded slightly. Others sat in quiet reflection. We sell luxury cars, but the most luxurious thing a customer can receive isn't the car, it's respect. A young employee seated near the end of the table hesitantly raised a hand. Daniel nodded. I think most of us don't intend to discriminate, but sometimes we make snap judgments, automatically. Daniel gave a slight nod, his eyes thoughtful. I understand. Everyone has unconscious biases, but if we don't recognize them and actively work to overcome them, then we don't belong in the service industry. He paused and turned to the whiteboard beside him. He wrote 3 words: respect, inclusivity, accountability. These 3 values will be the core of this showroom starting today. Not just toward customers, but toward coworkers, subordinates, janitors, and security guards alike. Because professionalism isn't in the suit, it's in how we treat people. All eyes drifted toward Lauren. But Daniel didn't point fingers, didn't name names. Instead, he addressed the entire room. This isn't a reprimand. This is an awakening. I'm not looking for someone to fire. I'm looking for people willing to change. No one spoke, but everyone knew. Something big had just begun. The atmosphere in the conference room had softened slightly. A few employees' faces showed signs of agreement, slow nods, as if someone had just opened a door they had always wanted to walk through, but never dared. Daniel stood in silence for a moment, then turned his gaze toward the corner of the room, where Lauren sat motionless, eyes fixed on the floor, both hands gripping her clipboard as if it could shield her from the eyes of the entire room. Lauren. His voice wasn't loud, but it instantly pulled everyone's attention to her. She looked up, meeting Daniel's gaze, not angry, not accusatory, but calm and heavy with meaning. I'd like to invite you to speak. Is there anything you'd like to share with everyone? Lauren took a deep breath. Her throat felt dry. She wasn't used to this position. No control, authority, or armor. She began, then paused to steady her voice. I was wrong. I looked at you, and probably not just you, and judged based on appearance. She glanced around the room at her former colleagues, now looking at her not as a manager, but as someone who had just slipped and fallen. I'm sorry. I truly apologize for misjudging you and for not giving you, or people like you, the chance to be treated properly. A few people nodded empathetically. Others remained silent. Daniel showed no outward emotion. He strolled toward her, stopping directly in front. Thank you for saying that, he said, voice low and firm. I believe in second chances, but a second chance doesn't come with unconditional forgiveness. It must begin with responsibility. Lauren swallowed hard and nodded. Daniel turned back to the rest of the room. We're starting over. All of us. Next week, I'll be working directly with Alex to roll out a new training program, not just to learn how to sell, but to learn how to see people with fairness. He paused, then added, I know many of you might be thinking, I'm not biased, but ask yourself, how many times have you made a decision based on someone's appearance, voice, skin color, or the car they drive? No one answered, but the question had taken root in each of them. From today on, if any of us witnesses discrimination, even the slightest, I want it spoken aloud, not to shame, but to correct. Because culture doesn't just appear. It's something we create every single day. Daniel looked back at Lauren, who now sat a bit straighter. I'll meet with you privately tomorrow, Lauren. We'll talk more about your role, expectations, and how to begin again. Lauren nodded, this time more clearly, and in her eyes, something had shifted. Not fear of losing her job, but a desire to hold on to what's right. The meeting ended, and people slowly filed out of the room. There was no applause, no loud conversation, but in the air, something had shifted, as light as smoke, but as lasting as a silent etching into stone. Lauren remained seated. She stood up slowly and walked over to Daniel once the room was empty. Mr. Carter, she began softly, I know you could have chosen a different path today. You could have fired me, humiliated me, and I probably would have deserved it. Daniel looked at her, saying nothing, just listening. But you didn't. You gave me a chance to make it right, and I promise I won't waste it. Daniel gave a slight nod. His gaze was no longer cold. It carried understanding. I hope you keep that promise, he said calmly. I believe people can change if they're truly committed, and I want those who've made mistakes to be the ones teaching others the right way. Lauren nodded through misty eyes. She turned to leave, but her steps were steadier than before, as if she had just left an old shadow behind. A few days later, Daniel stood in the center of the luxury cars showroom, the afternoon sun glinting off the cars like living metal. He looked around. No more judgmental glances, no more whispered sarcasm. The staff spoke to customers more openly, and their service was warmer and more proactive. Alex approached, holding a clipboard. The first training session starts Monday, and Lauren volunteered to lead the opening module on bias-free customer engagement. Daniel gave a soft smile. Good. We're moving in the right direction. Alex looked at him for a moment, then said, You're not like any CEO I've worked with. Daniel glanced out the glass doors, where a young man in a hoodie stood hesitating at the entrance. Good, he replied. I didn't come here to be like anyone else. I came to change the way people see a person. And so, Luxury Cars was no longer just a place that sold supercars. It became a place where customers, no matter how they dressed, where they came from, or how much money was in their wallet, felt welcomed as human beings who deserved to be there. Daniel Carter didn't just own a showroom. He sparked a quiet reform where kindness was elevated into standard practice and prejudice was peeled away, layer by layer, through action. Leadership isn't about control. Leadership is having the courage to change what no one else dares to speak about, and starting by treating every person like they matter, because they truly do. Daniel Carter.